Rahmallahu man kara al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود فطر الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووتد بالصخور ميدان أرضه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين واللعن الله على أعدائهم أجمعين قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقان الحميد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وجعلناهم أئمة يهدون بأمرنا وأوحينا إليهم فعل الخيرات وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وكانوا لنا عابدين آمنا بالله وصدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Isra or Banu Israel as we know it, 21st Surah, ayah number 73 tells us, and we made them imams who guided people by our command. And we revealed to them the doing of good and the keeping up of prayer and the giving of the alms, and us alone did they serve. When we look at this ayah, this verse of Surah Banu Israel refers to the rank of imama and the leadership of prophets as well as the messengers of Allah and the Aimma of the Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam as well. These great personalities who were direct divine appointees of Allah were guides with special qualities. Besides their righteousness, these divine leaders instituted important and valuable programs for human beings to progress towards felicity. The rank of divine imamat is an additional rank that was given to only some of the prophets and also the imams of the Ahlul-bayt, and what it denotes is absolute leadership of these upon the people. We should not misconstrue. Nubuwat and Risalat are very lofty ranks. It's not for anyone. These are also divine appointments and should not be taken any lightly. However, there is a slight difference in the responsibilities of the Nabi, the Rasul, as well as the Imam. The responsibilities, amongst the responsibilities of the prophets and the messengers, is to receive wahi and convey the commands of Allah to the people. And their basic role is to be giving the glad tidings and warn people of Allah's punishments. Whilst the imams, if they are not the prophets as well, like the Aimma of the Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam, they do not receive wahi and have the responsibility of putting these divine commands into practice and into action. They take us towards acting and practicing those commands in a practical way. Sometimes these imams establish these programs through a just government, like in the case of Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayh. And soon, inshallah, the Imam of our time, Imam Al-Hujjah, Ajjallahu Ta'ala Farajah Sharif. However, as we know, most of the Imams did not have a just government in their control. They were not heading the governments, and they also were, although they did not have the authority of the government per se, they still put up these divine programs and implemented them even without them being at the helm of the government. The most vital responsibility of divinely appointed Imam is to train people towards practicing divine guidance, and prove the truth of the divine ordinances. Whatever Allah is sent is the truth, and how do we realize that? Is through implementing those divine programs. Today we have gathered here, alhamdulillah, to commemorate one such Imam whose name is Ali ibn Muhammad al-Hadi An-Naqi alayhi salatu wassalam. He was the son of our ninth Imam, as we all know, and his mother was Sumana, a freed bondmaid of the ninth Imam, who was trained by the ninth Imam himself. He was born on 15th of Zil-Hajj in the year 212 Hijrah in Medina, and he lived for 42 years only. He lived with his father for only 8 years before he took up the reins of Imamat, and then his Imamat ran for 34 years. These 34 years were some of the most turbulent years, in which the most notorious of the Banu Abbas, Mutawakkil Abbasi, was one who ruled 14 years out of these 34 that the Imam was in the Imamat. Now when we look at his two titles, the most famous two titles, An-Naqi and Al-Hadi. An-Naqi means pure. Pure here means the immaculate and clean from spiritual and ethical point of view, whilst Al-Hadi is a guide. Now all Aimma alayhimus salam were guides. All prophets as well as Rasul were guides as well. However, this particular Imam came to be known as Imam of guidance because of many reasons during his time. And we will look at a couple just in a moment, inshallah. The foundation of Shia faith rotates around and revolves around the concept of Allah having appointed the Imam, not the people choosing their own leaders. There is no selection, there is no election, there is nothing as far as the divine appointment is concerned. It is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is the one who has appointed this. When we look at the concept or the reality of guidance, we see that Allah had a program from the onset. Nabi Adam alayhi salam was created and was appointed the representative of Allah, Khalifatullah, at the onset when it was only him, and thereafter he was joined by Janab Hawa. Guidance was always there. Allah created the system of guidance from the onset, and it remained and continued and will continue until the day of judgment. It never stopped. Prophets came one after the other. Some were together in different regions for different purposes. However, guidance never stopped. And after completion of Nubuwwat at the end of the life of Rasulullah Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the need for Nubuwwat and Risalat ended, but the need of guidance never ended. What do we mean by this is, when we are asked this question, why was there imamat after Rasulullah only? This was not a concept in the previous prophets. How did it begin and why did it have to be there? Or when we are told that Allah had already perfected His religion. The Quran says, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinukum. So He had already perfected, then why the need of imams? The answer is within the question that yes, Allah finished and completed the deen of Islam at the end of the life of Rasulullah before he went away from this, departed from this world. However, the need of guidance never ended and will never end until the day of Qiyamah. There has to be a guide from Allah to show us the path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What this means is the tenets of Sharia, the laws were completed. When Al-Yawma Akmaltu Lakum Dinukum came, the revelation was complete. But how to work on those revelations in various times until the day of Qiyamah still is required and will be there and will remain until the day of Qiyamah. Therefore, Allah did not leave us without a guide. He sent us one after the other. And each one was a madloom in his own ways and in his own times. Even Rasulullah himself says in the famous hadith of Thaqalain that he has left behind the Quran and the Ahlul-bayt. And if we hold on to both of them, hold on to them both fast, then we shall never ever go astray. So who are these Imams? The Imam whom we are commemorating, Imam Ali ibn Muhammad An-Naqi al-Hadi salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, has taught us a ziyarat that we know as ziyarat-e-jami'ah. This is a very important ziyarat for all of us. And we must take some time to read even parts at a time, if we cannot do the whole thing together, to understand the status of Imams. That who are these Aimma alayhimus salam of the Ahlul-bayt. When Imam tells us, for example, in the second paragraph, he says, Assalamu ala aimmatil huda wa masabih ad-duja. Peace be upon you, the Imams of guidance, the bright lamps in darkness. وَعَلَامِ التُّقَى, the flags of taqwa and piety. وَنَوِنْ نُحَا وَأُولِي الْحِجَى, who have full understanding of intelligence and honors of wisdoms. These are وَكَحْفِ الْوَرَى وَوَرَثَةِ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ. These are people who are the caves for mortals. They are the sanctuaries for mortals. And the inheritance of all prophets, which include even Rasulullah Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is just one small paragraph from Ziyarat-e-Jamia. But it introduces to us the status and the rank of the Aimma alayhimus salam, that if we are able to understand and comprehend even a part of it, then our love for Ahlul-bayt will be better, and that will bring us nearer, inshallah, to Allah in His obedience towards His command. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When we look at the life of the 9th, 10th and 11th Imams, for example, it was a crucial period of history for the Shias of the Ahlul-bayt, specifically, also Muslims, but specifically the Shias. For almost 200 years after the departure of Rasulullah, there was an Imam amongst the people whom people could access easily. There were times where it was difficult, but there was still access to them. The period that was now going to come was a different period, when the 12th Imam, Imam al-Hujjah ajallahu ta'ala Farajul Sharif, was to come, and the period of Ghaiba was to begin. And therefore it was the Imam's duty and responsibility to prepare the people for that period of Ghaiba. And therefore we will see that in the very short lives of the 9th, 10th and 11th Imams, these were the Imams who lived very little. For example, the 9th Imam was only 25 when he was martyred. The 10th Imam was 42 when he was martyred. And the 11th Imam was only 28 when he was martyred. These were killed because the Banu Abbasi rulers were frightened and feared the coming of the 12th Imam, and they wanted to prevent the coming of the 12th Imam. And when we will discuss the 11th Imam's life, we will see how they wanted to prevent, yet Allah established his light. So they persecuted with dhulm. And when we look at the 10th Imam, his life was of such dhulm, of such a period where Mutawakkil had put so many problems for the Imam and had created so many issues for the Imam. Yet these Imams prepared people on what to do during the times of ghaibah. How to understand Allah, how to understand the commands of Allah, how to follow the sunnah of Rasulullah, what is the seerah of the Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam in following the Quran and the Ahlul-bayt. This was a very important task, and this was something that was clarified and given lots of importance by these three Imams. The 10th Imam in particular gave a lot of importance to fiqh, how to adopt the rules and the commands of Sharia. And we will discuss shortly, inshallah. Imam is not a guide for the Shias who love him or the Shias who follow him. Imam is a guide for mankind, whether men or human beings accept him or otherwise. Whether they follow him or otherwise, he is still a guide for mankind. It is not for a group of people. He is a guide for everyone. And when we see in the life of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, there is a very interesting event of a Christian who understood the rank and the status of Imam al-Hadi as the Imam of Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam. It was a time during the Imam's time that Mutawakkil had summoned a Christian by the name of Yusuf bin Yaqub, not Yusuf bin Yahya. He was Yusuf bin Yaqub, who was a Christian and who lived in the Mosul area of Iraq. When he was summoned, in those days the Christians and the Muslims lived together and they interacted with each other. There was no issues, and in every era, if we see, there was never issues of people living despite having differences in their faith, race, color, whatever. There was no problem. The only problem was the politicians who wanted to divide people to establish their rule. They created issues amongst people. And one of the family friends of Yusuf bin Yaqub narrates that one day Yusuf came to our home in Baghdad. The narrator is a Shia Muslim and Yusuf bin Yaqub is a Christian. And he came to them as a guest in Baghdad. He was in Mosul, he came to Baghdad, and my father was a very close friend of Yusuf, so my father asked him, "What brings you to Baghdad in these times?" And he answered that I have been summoned by Mutawakkil to go and see him. In those days, whoever it was, whether a Muslim, a Shia, a Christian, whoever, by whatever race he was threatened whenever Mutawakkil called him. People would first say, "Inna lillah, what is going to happen to me? We don't know." And nobody wanted to cross Mutawakkil, nor anybody wished that he should be called to go and see him. Invitation of Mutawakkil was also a problem. So it was a serious concern, but Yusuf says, "I have no choice in the matter. I cannot say no. So I have to go. However, I have taken an insurance for my life. And therefore what I have done is I have put aside 100 dinars as the premium for my insurance for my life. And I need to go and give this 100 dinars before I see Mutawakkil. And my niyat is that, Ya Allah, I am going to see a zalim, a tyrant of the time, not knowing what the outcome of this meeting is going to be. I thus insure my life with you for this 100 dinars. He said that I have made this niyyah. The question is who do I give this 100 dinars to? I have made this niyyah with Allah, but who do I give this 100 dinars to? And he was a Christian, not a Shia, not even a Muslim. He says, I have carried this amount with me so that I can give it to Ibn al-Rida before I see the zalim. In those days, because Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida salawatullahi wa alayhi was very famous and very well known amongst the people, The 9th, 10th as well as the 11th Imam were all known as Ibn al-Rida, the son of al-Rida. And therefore he says, I want to go and see Ibn al-Rida first before I go to the Zalim and give this 100 dinars, which is my insurance premium, and I need to give it to him. This is the house of Allah. This is the sanctuary of people. And he is one of our Shafi, and he is the intercessors. These Aimma alayhimus salam are not only Shafi for us, only as in terms of Qiyamah, but even in this world and this life, they are our wasila to Allah. And we go to them for our help, so that they may intercede on our behalf with Allah, because of their closeness to Allah, because they are the deposits of the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The friend says that Yusuf left for Samarra from Baghdad and came back after 3 days, safe and sound, and as well as very happy. So my father asked him, who was his close friend, what happened in your journey? So Yusuf now narrates. He says, when I went to Samarra, I went to the place, the Musafir Khana or whatever, whoever he was putting up with, and I asked the host if he could take me to the house of Ibn al-Rida. And the host explained to me that, are you not aware that Ibn al-Rida is not allowed to leave his house, and nor is anyone allowed to go and visit him? How will I be able to take you there? So he says, it put me into a dilemma that what I should do next. And in that, he says, I came up with an idea. See, when we are sincere in our intention, Allah opens the way for us and He shows us a way. He says, I got an idea. He says, I thought of that idea and I took my slave and my donkey, I rode the donkey and my slave followed us, and we left the reins of the donkey wherever it will take us. He says the donkey strayed for a while, went between one alley and the other, and finally came to a place and stood by a door where he would not move. He would not want to move. We tried so hard to push him to move forward, but he just simply stood there and did not want to move. So I told my slave to find out whose door is this that the donkey has stopped at. And he was told that this is the door of Ibn al-Rida, Imam Ali ibn Muhammad An-Naqi al-Hadi salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi ajma'in. So he says, I asked my slave to go and knock on the door and find out whose door it is. But for me, it was a proof, my first proof, that Allah has brought me and wanted me to come to Ibn al-Rida before I go and see the Zalim. And he said this was a proof for me. And however, when the servant from inside opened the door, he immediately asked me, are you Yusuf ibn Yaqub? I have not even saluted the man. He does not know me, nor have I introduced myself. And this was my second proof, Yusuf says, that the Imam of the time, though he did not believe in him, knew exactly who I was and what I was coming for. And he says this was my second proof. And the servant called me by my name even without having introduced myself to him. He says the servant ushered us in and made us sit in a waiting area, as we would say, in a front room. And he went inside and came back. When he came back, he says, O Yusuf ibn Yaqub, you have an envelope with 100 dinars that you have come with, you can give it to me. And this was my third proof that Imam knew why I have come to him, and what the Imam knows is the secrets that Allah has placed in him. So he gave it to him, and after a while when he went in and came back again, he told us that the Imam is now ready to meet you, and he took us to the Imam. When I sat in front of the Imam, I told the Imam, I have nothing more to say because I have seen enough proof, sufficient proof for me to know where I have come and what I have come for, which you know better than me. So Imam asked him, even after all this, are you still not ready? meaning ready for accepting Islam. So he hesitated. Yusuf says, I hesitated. But Ibn Rida told me, now Yusuf is narrating this to the father of the friend, the friend which was the father of the narrator, and he says that Imam tells me that you will die a Christian. You are not going to accept Islam in your life. I know that. However, your son, by this name, the name was given to him, and his progeny are not going to be Muslims only, but good Shias of the Ahlul-bayt also. So we need to realize this, that when we discuss imamat, that these were not only good people and righteous and learned, but these are the link between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the ultimate decision maker, but they are our shafi, our intercessor. The Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam are our firm link to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we look at the personal life of Imam, for example, he was a source of guidance for us. Every action of his, the way he lived, the way he acted and interacted with people is a source of guidance for us, all the Imams. And there is another very interesting event, that he had a servant, Imam himself had a servant by the name of Kafur, who lived with the Imam. And because he lived within the same compound with the Imam, Imam had given him a duty that every night before he retires to sleep, he keeps a bucket of water for him in a particular place, so that whenever the Imam would wake up, it would avail him water for his wudu, for ibadat and for salatil layl and all that. So that the Imam did not want to wake the servant or disturb him in the middle of the night. On one particular night, Kafur says that before I was going to retire, Imam reminded me that do not forget to put that bucket of water, because I need it in the middle of the night. And he says, on that very particular night, I forgot about it and I went to sleep. He says, I woke up when I heard the Imam's footsteps and the sound of Imam. And when I realized this, I was feeling scared that the Imam may scold me for having forgotten. But when I went to him, I saw Imam was doing wudu, and Imam asked him and says, O Kafur, don't you know my method of wudu? Do you not know that even on a cold night, I do my wudu with cold water? However, you have warmed this water and kept it for me. So Kafur, in all astonishment, says, Ya Imam, Wallah, I have not put this bucket here tonight, and nor have I warmed this water today. So Imam immediately responded, Alhamdulillah, we will never ever reject the blessings of Allah. What this means is, Imam is telling us that if Kafur did not put that bucket of water there, then it is a blessing of Allah. How it came there, Allah knows it best. And we have to accept His blessings in whichever way. If He sent us warm water, then let it be so. I will do my wudu with warm water. And then Imam, addressing Kafur, says, Alhamdulillah, all praise is to Allah that He made us among those who are obedient to Him, and He has given me the opportunity to help me in worshipping Him, the tawfiq that Allah gives. And thereafter said, Imam then warns us by saying, these incidents are to warn us. Imam says, my grandfather Rasulullah used to say that Allah becomes angry and upset for someone who does not accept the convenience that Allah has given to us. The word convenience is here, which in Arabic is rukhsa, rukhsat, allowance, convenience. That is how it is translated. And we should understand that when Allah has given us conveniences in certain matters, we should not say, no, this is not correct. Before we look at some examples of how we sometimes tend to be holier than thou, let us look at the very first instance when Allah created Adam and Shaitan's rebellion. When we look at that event, we see that Allah had asked the angels, and though Iblis was not an angel, he was of the jinn, his rank had been such that he was elevated, and his status was elevated to be amongst the angels, and therefore the command of doing sajda to Adam included Iblis as well. However, when Allah commanded him to do it, to do the sajda, everyone did the sajda except Iblis. And when he was told why you did not do sajda, he says that, Ya Allah, I have worshipped you for thousands of years. Thus I will only do sajda to you and none other. Now we may feel that Shaitan was the highest rank of being a muwahid. His tawheed was so pure that he would not do sajda to Adam but Allah only, forgetting that Allah had commanded that sajda, and Allah's command is of obedience to him, and therefore whether he tells us to do sajda, told the angels to do sajda to Adam, or whether he tells us to do sajda to him, his command and his obedience is what is paramount and must not be forgotten at any time. What happened? Shaitan was banished. He is one who said, I will not do sajda to anyone but you, Ya Allah. Yet Allah banished him and he became a mal'oon. So we have to understand that worship is only obeying Allah in the way He wants us to obey Him, not the way we feel that this should be His obedience. And there are many examples we can give. For an example, I cannot wake up in the morning for Fajr and I feel highly spirited and I recite 4 rakat of Fajr instead of 2. Some of the Muslim people have done that in the past, but that is not our subject. If I feel so spirited and so blessed on that morning, I do my Fajr wajibat as 2 rakats only. And then I can do 2 rakats of shukr, or I can do as many other 2 rakat salat for shukr and hamd of Allah. There is no problem with it. Allah may accept it and may reward us amply for that. But I cannot change Fajr from 2 to 4. This is where we need to comprehend the importance of fiqh and masails of fiqh. We sometimes conjure and make our own whims of this is how it should be, because one law says this way, this must be like this. Because Isha is 4 rakat, I can do sunnat of 4 rakat also, I cannot do it. Mustahab salat cannot be more than 2 rakats. Masails of deen are important. We have neglected them. We are not looking at them. But these are questions that we have to understand, and these are things that we have to understand. The period of fasting is coming soon. And one of the most regular questions that comes before Mahi Ramadan or during Mahi Ramadan is, why do I not have to fast and repay later if I am traveling? During the days of Rasulullah, these people who make these arguments are well read or misread. I cannot say this, but I can say one thing: they put up the name of Rasulullah, they put up so many other commands of Allah, the way Shaitan did for Adam. Rasulullah's time, people had difficulties in traveling. They used to travel on donkeys and camels and horses, and used to take time. And therefore, because of that, Rasulullah gave them that allowance and convenience of not fasting. Whilst Allah Himself in Surah Baqarah says that if one is a traveler or one is sick, then he will fast on other days. So his response will be, but Mahi Ramadan is Mubarak, Mahi Ramadan is holy, Mahi Ramadan is in which it is wajib to fast. Yes, it is wajib to fast with its conditions. If you are a traveler, you cannot fast and you will have to pay up. This is just an outline. There are masails and requirements of this. When Allah gives us a convenience, we cannot change that convenience. Sometimes we are told we fly by jets. There is no time. Time is flying. We are traveling in convenience. Why kasar salat? Why not fast? Why this? Why not that? These are commands of Allah, mu'mineen. We need to follow these commands, and we cannot bring our own conjectures in this. We have no say. When Allah and His Prophet have decided on a matter and the law has been legislated, none can change them. A very common subject. Allah mentions zakat so many times in the Quran. We are not followers of Hasbuna Kitab Allah. We are followers of Thaqalain, where Rasulullah has categorically and expressly told us that the Quran and the Ahlul-bayt are together and complementary. And therefore, when we say so many times zakat is mentioned, I want to give zakat, why are you not giving emphasis on zakat? We know that the Aimma alayhimus salam have told us that there are 9 items upon which zakat is wajib, and that is it. We cannot increase it, we cannot decrease them. If we have anything that is in these 9 categories, then by all means the wajibat remains. There are conditions to this. But if I do not fall into that category, any of them, then I can give as much charity and as much donation as mustahab. And inshallah, if I am sincere, Allah will accept and reward me amply, but I cannot call it zakat, which is zakat mal that we are talking about. We have to understand this. What is wajib, and what is mustahab is mustahab. What is haram, and wajib and haram, there is no compromise in this. One common argument today, as we go along, time is up, I know, I'll finish it very soon. It says, why do Shias combine salat? They have made it a habit for themselves. Rasulullah used to pray separately. Why are the Shias hell-bent on combining their salat? The aspect is, yes, Rasulullah separated his salat and also recited salat of Zohar and Asr and Maghrib and Isha together. And when he was asked once that what is the reason for this, he only said that so that my ummah would not find itself in any inconvenience or difficulty. And he has used the word haraj, that should be no inconvenience. If Rasulullah has allowed us, yes, those who want to separate their salat can do so by all means, and those who want to pray together can do so by all means. Neither those who pray together can condemn those who pray separately, nor those who pray separately condemn those who pray together. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Some of us would, many times in our discussions, want to complicate Sharia. Allah has given us conveniences. When a person is sick, there is ways of how to conveniently pray salat also. There are many conveniences that have been given. Not on a healthy body, but when physically we are unable, then Allah has given us those conveniences. Why are we trying to complicate issues? If we do not know, we should ask those who know. And if those who know amongst us cannot answer, they will find out from those who know better, inshallah. And we are people, the followers of the Ahlul-bayt, who have the guidance and also the shelter of the Maraje Kiram, who would guide us at every point. And these days, communication is also so easy. So we should not create complications in deen. Tonight, we commemorate the Shahadat of this Imam, who emphasized fiqh, who was a guide to mankind, who was an intercessor and shafi for all. Imam al-Hadi suffered misfortunes upon misfortunes, distresses upon distresses by these Abbasid tyrants and caliphs. Mutawakkil, who was the most spiteful, he is compared to Yazid bin Muawiyah of the Banu Umayyah. Mutawakkil is the same as what Yazid was. Mutawakkil oppressed the Imam so much that he called him from Medina and he imprisoned him under house arrest. He kept him in that, and it was such that he's prevented people who wanted to seek knowledge of the Imam from visiting the Imam. He did not allow anyone to go and even discuss with the Imam. This is what he was, a terrible crime, and a terrible crime against itself. He imposed economic blockade upon the Imam and his family, and prevented people from even taking their legal dues to the Imam. He left the Imams in pressing neediness to the extent that periodically he would send his criminals and his police to go and raid the house of the Imam in the middle of the night sometimes, and search if there was any literature against the Banu Abbas, or if he had gathered any money for himself and or any arms. After Mutawakkil came the time of Mu'tamid, the Abbasid Khalif, who could not tolerate the piety of the Imam. He could not tolerate the asceticism, the virtues and the knowledge of the Imam that was discussed openly amongst the people. He was not compared to any. And because of this, and because his spite and being envious of the Ahlul-bayt, he served poison to the Imam, who after taking that poison was kept on to bed. The poison reached all his body and he suffered intolerable pains. The poison reacted and Imam al-Hadi was in pain that was from head to toe. And when his death approached him, he turned towards the Qibla and began reciting the Quran. He breathed his last while the mention of Allah was still on his lips. His great and pure soul ascended to the Creator surrounded by the angels. The earth turned dark by the loss of the Imam, whilst the heavens shone bright to receive the coming of the Imam. People lost much good by his death because he was a leader, a guide and a defender of the rights of the weak and the oppressed. Imam Hassan al-Askari gave ghusl and kafan to the father, enshrouded it and offered the prayer of janaza, while his heart was full of pain, sorrow and regret. Samara was shocked at this great disaster. People of all classes hurried to get the honor of escorting the bier of the Imam to his final destination. State offices were ordered to close down, and wazirs, ulama, judges, prominent leaders also joined the procession of the Imam's funeral. Our lamentation is, Ya Imam, you were madloom your entire life. You were in so much distress and pain your entire life. But Ya Imam, your sister Hakima Khatun was next to you, and your son Imam al-Askari was also there to give you ghusl and kafan. Ya Imam, but we remember another sister in Karbala. When she saw that Shimr was seated on the chest of Abu Abdullah, and she was on that hilltop of Zainabiyah, where she says, Yabna Saad, you are watching the son of Fatima being butchered and you are not saying anything. Zainab could not even console Abu Abdullah at that time, and thereafter there were so thousands of soldiers of Yazid who were thirsty of the blood of Fatima. And after the Shahadat of Imam Hussein, when Jibreel says, Kutil al-Husseinu bi Karbala, they all ran towards the tents of the Ahlul-bayt. They did not leave the women of Rasulullah, the daughters of Fatima and Ali. And when they put Imam Zainul Abidin into chains, that when they were being taken to Sham, Zainab alayhi salam says that I saw the face of Sajjad, my nephew, and thought that he will die. And he says, Oh Sajjad, what is wrong? And Imam Zainul Abidin says, Oh my heart, I am looking at my father on the plains of Karbala, but I cannot even give him his final rites before. لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم يا حسين.
يا حسين يا حسين